Tonight, we dive into the legend of Arion, the overlooked son of Hephaestus. Not born of Olympus, but forged in fire and hammered into life in a mortal's forge. His destiny? To steal the sacred flame locked atop Mount Olympus and rekindle the dying hearths of humankind. But this was no ordinary quest. Blocking his path, a hellish three-headed beast, a vengeful god in winged sandals, and a storm-calling oracle who foresaw one ending, Arion's death. So before you settle in too deeply, hit that like button and subscribe. Only if you genuinely enjoy tales that dance between myth and shadow. And hey, let us know in the comments, where are you tuning in from? What time is it where you are? Some nights, our stories replace sleep. Others? They just stir up louder dreams. Now, dim the lights, let the hum of your fan fill the silence, and let's step into the glow of this tale together. In the flame-drenched village of Myene, where sweat and steel collided, lived a woman whose skill rivaled legend. Her name was Callista, a blacksmith by blood, whose hammer sung as it struck metal. She forged swords that cut the wind and armor so perfect, rumors claimed Ares once wore her breastplate into war. The gods took notice, but only one descended, Hephaestus, the god of fire, the crippled craftsman of Olympus, watched from afar. He wasn't lured by beauty. Callista didn't bathe in rosewater or dress in silk. She bore soot like a crown, and the scent of pine smoke clung to her skin. But her movements, they stirred something in him, something ancient. One blood-red night, cloaked in smoke and silence, Hephaestus entered her forge. He brought no gifts, no words, just presence. The fire flared that night, and 9 moons later, a child arrived. Arion. He didn't cry. His eyes opened, glowing like embers, and the forge's flame danced in recognition. The midwives murmured in awe. "He's marked," said one. "He won't stay long," said the eldest. Arion grew fast. By 5, he shaped iron. By 7, he forged a blade, flawless and warm. He didn't play, didn't lie. A stillness clung to him, unsettling the village. They whispered, cursed, God-born yet throneless. The priests kept their distance, but Callista, she held him close. She taught him not just how to mold fire, but how to honor it. Fire listens, she'd say, only to those who respect it. By 16, Arion's forge burned constantly, crafting weapons for kings he'd never see and cities he'd never touch. But within him, something burned brighter than any blade. A purpose. He wasn't born to serve. He was born to ignite change. Long ago, mankind was gifted the eternal flame, stolen from Olympus by Prometheus. Not just fire, but inspiration. The spark of thought, art, and creation. It had once set man apart. But the rebellion faded. Mortals forgot the gift, and the gods, in turn, turned away. It started small. Hearths once eternal flickered out. Winters stretched crueler. Summers grew cold. Children huddled beside empty fireplaces. Ashes replaced warmth. Priests warned of divine wrath. Scholars blamed the stars. But everywhere, fear bloomed. Not of endings, but abandonment. They were right. High atop Olympus, the gods hid the final ember. A single spark guarded in the divine brazier, untouched for centuries. No god would share it again. They feared rebellion, feared another Prometheus. Let them suffer, they told themselves. They must remember who rules. But not all gods agreed. Whispers began. Dryads spoke of a flame-born boy. Nymphs saw embers in a young man's gaze. From Myene, the wind carried a name. Arion. In distant temples, Ancient candles flared back to life at the sound of hammer on steel. Arion didn't know. He only felt the change. The iron grew stubborn. The flame fought back. The warmth waned. But the world was watching. Silent gods turned their gaze toward Myene. And atop Olympus, in the marble-wrapped chamber where the divine flame lay, it flickered. For the first time in an age. But the call that stirred wasn't from Olympus. It came from deep within, responding not to gods, but to a boy born of fire and burden. And slowly, a glow began to build inside him. Far away, the sacred site of Delphi withered, once the heart of divine council, where warriors and kings scaled ancient paths to hear Apollo's words. Now it stood crumbling. The columns split, sacred springs faded to mist, and silence replaced prophecy. Only one voice remained, buried in the mountain's breath. Arion arrived alone. No welcome waited at the temple gates. The torches were cold, long abandoned. Ivy clung to shattered idols like fingers desperate to hold on to forgotten belief. Thunder rumbled above, not from a coming storm, but from something old, aware. He descended the worn steps into the hollow, where generations had once begged and bled for fate's favor. There, seated on a throne of cracked stone, the oracle waited. Her violet robes draped like smoke, skin pale as ash, eyes blind, but filled with lightning. Before he could speak, she gasped, as though flame had leapt back into her lungs. Arion, she rasped, though his name had not been spoken aloud. He said nothing. You will scale the mountain. You will seize the flame. And you will die. Her voice shattered the silence like lightning. He did not flinch. He had heard tales of oracles speaking in riddles, wrapped in poetic fog. But this was not a riddle. It was a verdict. She stood slowly, her limbs flowing like smoke on the wind. The gods will rise against you. The world will demand your failure. That flame you seek, it belongs to no man. It was stolen once. The price was chains for eternity. Arion stepped forward, fists tight. Then let me be the one who pays. Silence. Then, laughter. Not mocking, but worn. The laugh of someone who has seen too many endings. You already have, she whispered. The chamber dimmed. Thunder rolled above. The air pulsed with ancient power. Then, stillness. The oracle collapsed back into her seat. Her mouth opened. Only smoke drifted out. The prophecy had spoken. Arion left without a word, but her vision followed him. In his dreams, in every flame, in every flicker his forge would cast. The gods had answered. His path was set. Yet even Olympus could not predict what might happen when a dying world tasted fire again. But first, Olympus would test him. No one climbed a sacred mountain without the mountain granting passage. Olympus bowed to no unproven soul. Legend said its base was not built of stone, but of spirit. Beneath it lay a gate, sealed by silence, guarded by the oldest terror ever known, Cerberus, the hound of Hades. No one could pass without facing death first. Arion knew the stories, as well as a smith knows flame. He understood what waited beneath the roots of Olympus. And so, to reach the flame, he would first descend, not symbolically, but truly, into the underworld. He prepared not with weapons, but with creation. For 3 days and nights he forged a collar, not for war, for surrender.
Crafted from obsidian, iron, and the final ember of his mother's forge, he etched 3 names into its band, one for each of Cerberus's heads. As he worked, he whispered them: memory, loyalty, grief.
On the 4th day, he arrived at the mouth of a cave, said to fall forever into shadow. The wind didn't chill the skin, it scraped the soul. The scent in the air wasn't rot, but lost prayers. He stepped inside, deeper, deeper still. He passed bones that faintly glowed, torches that lit without fire. And then, he heard it, breathing, massive, layered, like 3 storms dreaming together. Cerberus. He entered a clearing. The beast lay sleeping on a bed of ash and bone. Each head twitched its own rhythm, its fur blacker than absence, eyes closed, ears flicking. Arian did not draw steel. He stepped forward, knelt, offered the collar. Then, softly, he hummed. The lullaby his mother used to sing on nights too heavy for words, when the world felt too cruel. The middle head stirred. The left opened a glowing amber eye. The right growled, then paused. They listened, and in the stillness, Arian fastened the collar. Cerberus sighed. Behind him, the gate creaked open, not with rage, but with reverence. Arian had touched death, and death stepped aside. The path to Olympus was no path at all. Jagged stone, freezing wind, no stars to follow, only instinct. Arian climbed with bleeding hands and burning veins. The mountain fought him. And then, someone appeared. Not with thunder, not with spectacle, but in silence. Hermes, the trickster, messenger, thief. He stood on a narrow ledge, dressed like a traveler, cloak loose, sandals feather-laced, eyes sharp as shattered glass. A coin twirled between his fingers, a crooked grin flickered on his lips. "Well," he said, tilting his head, "I thought you'd be taller." Arian didn't stop climbing. "I know why you're here," he said. Hermes strolled beside him, gliding rather than walking, his feet never touching the rock. "You really want to bring fire back to mankind. That's sweet, naive, and frankly, tragic." Arian stopped. "Then stop me." Hermes laughed, light and dry. "Stop you? Oh no, I'm not here for that. I'm just the one who makes sure you understand what you're walking into. Olympus itself, the god's vault. The heart of a myth that was never yours." Arian's voice was steady. "Still, here I stand." The grin faded just a bit. "You're trying to restore a balance that was broken on purpose," Hermes said. "That flame, it wasn't just a gift, it was a mistake. And now the gods guard it the way dragons guard treasure. Not because it's sacred, but because it's lethal." Arian met his gaze. Then they've forgotten what true danger is. For the first time, Hermes' eyes sharpened. The air seemed to shift. His coin vanished. Feathers along his ankles quivered. "You think you're Prometheus," he said, voice now glacial. "You're not even a shadow of him." "I'm not here to mimic," Arian replied. "I'm here to finish what he began." Hermes stepped in, pressing 2 fingers against Arian's chest. "Then take my gift." A jolt surged through him. It wasn't pain of flesh, it twisted something deeper, something buried. "The fire you chase," Hermes whispered, "will burn away everything you are." And with that, he vanished. The mountain groaned beneath Arian's feet. Thunder echoed, not storm, but judgment. A storm of consequence had begun. Still, he climbed, marked but unmoved. The curse nestled in his chest like cold breath in the lungs. At first, it was faint, a pressure when he inhaled, a quiet heat simmering under his ribs. But as he rose, it sharpened. Not like a blade, like erosion. He wasn't wounded. He was being scraped away. Mount Olympus was no longer stone and snow. It was alive, and it didn't want him there. The cliffs shifted underfoot. Wind howled like spirits disturbed from sleep. And the higher he went, the more unnatural the world became. Trees vanished. Birds fell silent. Even the stars pulled back from the sky. There were no trails, no signs, only raw ledges demanding sacrifice. Arion climbed anyway. He bled. He slipped. Once, he nearly fell to his death. But in that moment, a burst of warmth exploded inside his chest. It steadied him. The flame Hermes warned about, it was waking up. He thought of the dying fires in quiet homes, the shivering children, his mother's blistered hands shaping heat for a world that had forgotten what it was. So he kept going. Above, storm clouds thickened. Lightning arced across the peaks like gods pacing in irritation. He could feel their gaze, restless, angry, waiting for him to fail. But Olympus wasn't just resisting him. It feared him. He passed ruins etched into the rock, shrines long abandoned, altars cracked, forgotten, statues of Athena with sightless sockets, pillars of Zeus fractured by time. And Arion realized what no one dared say. The gods weren't mighty anymore. They were afraid. Afraid a mortal could relight the world without their permission, that someone not born among them might carry the light they once hoarded. So they struck at him with everything they had: ice, storms, illusions, voices. But he didn't stop. Torn hands, burning blood. He rose through the clouds. And then he saw it. Not a temple, not golden gates, not celestial choirs. Only silence and the flame. In the center of a still clearing, atop scorched stone, it waited. The brazier, ancient, wordless, crafted by hands lost to memory. Within it, flame. Not orange, not red, but white, blinding, alive, a fire that didn't flicker. It observed. Arion stepped forward. The heat didn't hurt, it entered him. As if it recognized him. His breath hitched. His skin trembled. The ember Hermes had planted inside him now beat like a second heart, calling to the flame like blood to blood. He reached out. Time cracked. He saw cities built from firelight. His mother's forge glowing in endless winter. Civilizations rising and collapsing, all born from fire, and all forgetting why it ever mattered. He saw Prometheus, shackled to stone, liver devoured each day by talons. The gods had named it justice. Arion saw the truth. It was fear, wearing a crown. He could leave, let the world adapt, forget warmth, forget him. But then, the wind stirred, and it spoke her name, Callista. And he remembered who he was. He reached for the flame and took it. Pain didn't consume him. It redefined him. His body howled, bones cracking, skin searing, blood igniting. He collapsed, silent, as fire surged into every part of him, not killing, but remaking. Not boy, fire bearer. He no longer held the flame. He was the flame. The brazier trembled, dimmed, then fell cold. The eternal fire was no longer bound to Olympus. It had chosen a vessel, and it had chosen him. Arion collapsed beside the blackened pedestal, smoke rising gently from his fingertips. But his eyes glowed like sunrise breaking through centuries of darkness. Each shallow breath he took sent ripples of warmth into the air, down the mountain, toward the frozen world below. He hadn't taken the fire for himself. He had become its messenger. Arion didn't descend Olympus. He carried it. The moment the flame entered his body, the mountain fell quiet. The wind hushed. The clouds scattered. Even the ground beneath his feet began to yield, as though guiding, not resisting him. He was no longer an intruder. He was a torchbearer, a flame in motion. His steps brought life, not burning heat, but the warmth that wakes flowers in frost and stirs color into gray earth. Frost melted in his presence. The wind that once cursed now sighed like spring. The air smelled not of smoke, but of beginnings. Yet he was breaking beneath it. His legs trembled, his chest heaved. The eternal flame was more than fire. It was memory. And he felt all of it. The first time fire touched a cave wall, the spark that lit Athens, the forge that molded Troy's destiny, but also its price. He saw cities scorched by ambition, temples reduced to cinders, wars ignited by flames meant to warm, not destroy. This gift had never been innocent. But this time, it would not be a weapon. He passed through the clouds, through stillness. Crumbling ruins greeted him, altars to gods once mighty, now fading. The cave where Cerberus once stood lay empty, the hound gone, as if death itself had stepped aside. Then came the world below, a frozen village, silent and starved. No chimneys smoked, no fires crackled, until Arion appeared. They gathered, not in fear, but wonder. He said nothing. He only reached out, and a flicker leapt from his fingers into the nearest hearth. It exploded into flame, then another, and another. A wave of warmth spread, hearth to hearth, across cities and fields and icy hills. A silent revolution. Arion burned. His hair shimmered like molten metal. His skin cracked like glass, kissed by fire. He was dying. But he wasn't fading. He was transforming. He didn't steal the fire. He became it. And wherever light returned, so did his name. Not in hymns, but in hushed thanks. No tomb was raised for Arion. No monuments carved. No ballads echoed from temple steps. No heroic last stand. Only the silence of a man who simply vanished. But he didn't disappear. After the fires came back, strange things happened. In towns untouched by travelers, hearths lit themselves. Forests frozen solid bloomed overnight. Blacksmiths swore their forges pulsed hotter. Children told of a glowing figure beside the flame, smiling, before vanishing into sparks. No proof, but always the same story. He walked until there was no body left to walk with. Not burned by weakness, but given over to something greater. His blood, bone, breath, becoming fire, smoke, heat. A final gift. Callista's forge, cold for decades, was the last to be touched. One night a traveler saw a boy hammering at a glowing white anvil, The next moment, only the fire remained. Tall, strong, familiar. They say Olympus felt it. The gods, sensing their hold had broken, stirred, but they did not strike. They did not curse. Because even they understood. Arion hadn't fought them with war or arrogance. He reminded them of purpose. And so, the eternal flame, once hidden, hoarded, now danced in every village, every home, every hidden hut in a forgotten mountain. It lived in bowls of warm soup shared by strangers, in candles lit for those long gone, in torches held by rebels in the dark. And always, always, they whispered one name, Arion. Some say, when your fire flickers for no reason, it's him passing by. Others swear, if you listen closely to the crackle, you'll hear it. The beat of a hammer on anvil. Steady, soft, unending. Because Arion never truly died. He became the warmth we forgot we needed. Not a god, not a legend. Just a boy who gave everything to help the world remember how to glow. She never spoke of it, but she knew this much. Every full moon, when Sparta held its breath and warriors sank into sleep, something deep within her stirred, pulling her, always, to the cliffs above the river Eurytus. There, she left behind her weapons, her armor, her fearsome name, and became only a woman beneath the stars, alone. The world, she felt, must be larger than Sparta, larger than war cries and discipline. It called to her in the blood, a silent song she couldn't hear, but felt with aching clarity. Then one night, under a sky so silver it looked like it had been sharpened on the edge of a blade, she saw it. Drifting across a still pool tucked deep in a hidden grove, a swan. It didn't move. It didn't flee. It watched her. Moonlight shimmered across its feathers, turning them into light and shadow braided together, beautiful in a way no sword ever had been. And in that quiet moment, Leonthi's life began to shift. Not away from strength, but towards something older, stranger, far more perilous. The grove itself was a secret, untouched by Spartan boots, nestled like a secret between twin cliffs. Everything whispered of ancient things, before gods had names, before Sparta carved its laws in stone. The trees arched like crescents, moonlight silvering their low branches. At their heart, the shallow lake, still as held breath. And floating there, the swan. Its plumage gleamed like starlight, woven by hand, not white, not gray, something in between. It glided across the surface as if smoke were carrying it. No ripple, no sound. Its neck curved with elegance, sculpted, not grown. And its eyes. They were not the eyes of an animal. No fear, no instinct, only awareness, knowing. Leonthi froze at the tree line. Every lesson in her training hissed caution. Nothing in nature behaved like this. Nothing that did could be trusted. But the swan remained, serene, watching, waiting. She took one step forward, its head tilted. Another step. Still no movement in the lake. She stopped at the water's edge, pulse calm but fingers ready, grazing the dagger on her thigh. Then, it moved, slow, deliberate, toward her. When it reached the shallows, it bowed its head, barely, but enough. She knelt. Leonthi had seen everything. Soldiers torn open, camps burning, the birth of calves gasping into life. But never this. Never stillness so absolute it felt holy. She reached out, touched feathers that radiated heat, not like flesh, but like light bottled in bone. And something bloomed in her chest. Not fear, not awe. Something ancient. A missing piece clicking into place. Connection. The swan blinked once, then turned, sliding back to the lake's heart. She remained kneeling, uncertain what had just begun, but certain it was not by chance. The next full moon, she returned. So did the swan. And again, the month after, and the month after that. No words, no gestures, just presence. It became ritual, sacred, silent, magnetic. By the time autumn painted the hills, Lethe no longer questioned why. The swan would be there, and that was enough. Seasons shifted, leaves bloomed, died, and bloomed again. Wars raged below, but the grove didn't change. Not in that moonlight. She stopped counting her worth by wounds or victories. Something older guided her now. Something beyond Sparta's laws. With each visit, she brought gifts. Fresh figs, hand-woven cloth, small wooden carvings. The swan never accepted them, never seemed to need them. Still, she offered them anyway. And always, the swan came. It met her at the edge of the water, bowed gently, drifted alongside her. Sometimes it circled her. Sometimes it simply stood, close enough for its warmth to kiss her skin. She began to speak, not like a general, like someone who had never been heard. She spoke of her father's coldness, of victories that filled no hollow, of nights spent staring at stars, aching for more than steel and silence. The swan never answered, but it listened. Its quiet wasn't absence. It was attention, a kind no man had ever offered. No suitor, no brother in arms, no friend. She braided her hair now before every meeting, smoothed her tunic, prepared herself not for battle, but for presence. She sat beside it for hours, shoulder against wing, speaking little, feeling more than she ever had in palace halls or bloodied fields. The swan never changed, never aged, never left. She should have feared it. There were tales, gods in disguise, punishing mortals for daring to love divinity. But Lethe no longer believed in tales. She believed in the way her hand curved perfectly against its neck, in the way it bowed when she sang, in how it seemed to wait for her, not as a deity, but as a kindred soul. No words, no vows, but in that silence, something ancient rooted itself deep in her. And though she never dared speak the word aloud, not even to herself, she knew. Lethe understood now. It was love. The swan was no creature of earth. Its wings had once stretched across constellations. Its hands had strummed the lyre that summoned the morning. Its name had echoed in temples of marble, in ballads sung by burning throats. Apollo, god of light, of music, of foresight. Now silent, feathered, forgotten. Long before she had ever drawn breath, Apollo had broken a sacred law. Not with sword nor rebellion, but with honesty. He had spoken out. Against Zeus. Against cruelty masquerading as justice. Against silence used as a leash. And Zeus, furious, had not slain him. No, he did worse. He erased him. Stripped of divinity, of voice, of form. No lightning bolt, no thunder, just a spell, brutal in its restraint. He was forced into feathers, bound into the body of a swan. Not to teach humility, not away, but to prove that even the sun can be swallowed by shadow. Apollo would remain in that form forever. No return, no redemption, just eternal stillness. So he waited, for years, centuries, watching from the edges of lakes, hidden in moonlight, watching mortals forget his songs, forget his temples, forget him, until her, Linthe. Something about her presence, her silence, cracked a place within him that even Olympus had abandoned. Hope. He had never meant to be seen, never meant to stay, but she returned, again and again. And when she spoke, not prayers, not offerings, but truth, something stirred in him. She was not born for temples, not destined to carry water for gods. She was a warrior. Her hands had known only iron. Her heart had been chiseled by discipline. Yet she saw him, not as omen, not as beast, but as something sacred. She gave him no fear, no worship, only presence. He never dared speak, never revealed his name. But in the soft tilt of his neck, in the steady hush of feathers, he answered all the questions she never dared to ask. And somehow, against all reason, against every law of Olympus, he loved her back. In Sparta, solitude was respected, but only in short doses. Leonthe's disappearances did not go unnoticed. With each full moon she vanished, slipping past barracks and patrols, absent from training fields and war tables. At first, no one dared question her. She was Leonthe, untouchable, fierce, the commander's daughter. But Sparta worshipped structure, routine, control, and love, especially love kept quiet, was a dangerous crack in the stone. Whispers slithered. She wanders too far. She speaks less. She fights, but her blade no longer bites. And they weren't wrong. She had changed. Her body still moved like a weapon, but her soul no longer hunted. There were nights she smiled when no one had spoken, and in her eyes bloomed something gentler than Sparta allowed. Her father noticed first. Commander Adrastus, a man carved from stone. His daughters were born to lead, not to feel. He called her to the war chamber one evening. No strategy, no shield drill. Just a question, plain and sharp. What keeps you from sleep? She gave him no answer. His voice turned iron. Do not forget who you are. But she already had. Or at least, the version Sparta had etched in her bones. What stone had shaped, water had softened. The swan had changed her, and she did not want to go back. Still, Sparta watched. One patrol followed her trail, tracked her steps past the groves, but lost her in the hills. She was too skilled to be caught. Yet it was enough. Enough to plant seeds of suspicion. Enough to make the priests murmur again. Omens, they whispered. Voices carried on moonlight. Lakes rippling without wind. A woman disappears each full moon, they warned. Perhaps she communes with madness, or worse, a god. Leonthe felt the pressure mounting. Eyes that once turned away, now turned toward. Silence, once her shield, became a noose. But still she went. Still she found him. In the grove where silver bathed feather and breath, She shed Sparta like an old skin. There was no discipline, no danger, only the ache to not be seen. Because if the world uncovered what her heart already knew, it would destroy them both. That night, the moon was swollen, not bright, but heavy, like a dying flame clinging to a wick. Leonthi stood alone in her chamber, fingers shaking above her armor straps, unable to fasten the last clasp. Something had shifted. She'd sensed it for days, a trembling beneath the earth, a warning without words. The swan had acted differently too, restless, on edge. Its feathers bristled when the breeze stirred. It circled her twice before settling, and its warmth, once like a sun, had begun to sting. Sleep escaped her, and when it finally came, it brought only visions. She stood in a silver grove, her hands covered in golden dust, and before her, a statue, not man, not bird, a hybrid, its wings frozen in mid-flight, its face serene, lifeless. She reached for it, called out a name she didn't yet know. She knew. Apollo. The moment she spoke his name, everything cracked. Not around her, but within. And a voice answered, not from above, but inside her marrow. Truth will freeze what love has kindled. She jolted awake, breath ragged, heart hammering. His name still burned on her lips. She tried to dismiss it, a dream, a flicker of imagination. But warriors know fear, and this wasn't fear. It was prophecy. That day, Leonthi left the city earlier than usual, her chest tight with something sharper than grief. She didn't follow her usual trail. Instead, her steps led her deeper into hills unfamiliar, through groves no one remembered. And there, behind ivy and moss, she found it, an altar, ancient, fractured. A single word etched in worn gold leaf, Apollon. She staggered back. Every piece clicked into place. The heat in his feathers, the way he listened, the dreams, the ache, the curse. He wasn't just enchanted. He was divine. He was hers. She had broken something sacred, the soft whisper of feathers behind her. She turned. The swan had followed. But this time it didn't soothe. It waited, not gracefully, but solemnly, as if it had known the truth had finally arrived. And with it, the end. The grove itself changed. Air thick, with something ancient rising from sleep. Moonlight trembled on the lake. Trees leaned inward, breathless. Leonthi froze. The name echoed again in her mind, sharp as a spear against stone. She turned, as if reversing could undo what was spoken. But too late. The swan stood, no longer radiant. Its light flickered like a dying flame. She stepped closer, mouth parted, unsure what to say, unsure if word could matter now. "I know," she whispered. The wind stopped. A feather loosened, drifted slowly from its back, fell toward the altar, and vanished into dust. Then the transformation began. The swan's neck arched, not in grace, but in agony. Its body shook. Feathers unraveled into strands of gold. Webbed feet split into human toes. Wings twisted into arms. And where the bird had stood, now knelt a man, Apollo, naked, radiant, broken. His hair shimmered like the horizon before dawn. His skin glowed as if lit from within. But his eyes, dimmed by sorrow. She stepped back, hand to mouth. She had loved him in silence, and now that silence had turned to stone. He tried to speak. The curse hadn't finished with him. His voice cracked. Ancient, fragile. "You weren't supposed to know," he rasped. "It was the only rule." She collapsed beside him, tears cutting through her warrior's mask. "I didn't mean to," she whispered. He smiled. Once. A god's goodbye. Soft. Final. "I know." And the earth trembled. No rumble, no flash, just judgment. Apollo's glow dimmed. His form hardened. His limbs stiffened, mid-reach. Stone claimed him piece by piece. His once living skin dulled like cooling steel. His golden hair turned brittle, like etched marble. There would be no forgiveness. Only sentence. Leonthe clutched his hands. Still warm, still his. But the chill crept quickly. His fingers curled around hers. One final time, and stopped. "No," she whispered. "No, please." But the curse had waited lifetimes. It had no mercy. Apollo's chest rose once, and stilled. Wings half-formed froze in place. His body bent in sorrow, trapped in motion. His face, still beautiful, locked between ache and love. His eyes remained open, but saw nothing. Silence fell. Not the silence of peace, but of absence, of something holy, shattered. Lethe dropped her forehead to his now cold hand, the same hand that had once cradled fire and stars. Her tears ran over stone, marking the end. Even the moon dimmed behind veils of cloud. No thunder followed, no wrath. Because the punishment had been fulfilled. Zeus had spoken. And Apollo, god of light, had been silenced forever. She didn't return to Sparta. She left her armor by the altar, unstrapped her sword, let her name drift into the lake like forgotten smoke. The grove became her only home. Each full moon she came, never missed one. No offerings, no prayers, just her presence and memory. She would sit beside the statue, fingers grazing stone where once there was warmth. Sometimes she spoke, sometimes she sang, quiet lullabies with no known words, songs that felt like they had always belonged to both of them. Other times, she just listened to the stillness. The villagers whispered. A woman haunted the hills, they said, wandered under full moons, eyes distant as stars. Some called her mad, others called her chosen. No one dared approach. Years passed. Empires crumbled, gods grew quiet, but Leonthe remained. Older, but unbent. Her strength no longer that of a warrior, but of roots. An olive tree surviving every storm, holding the same patch of earth, season after season. And still, the statue stood. Apollo, frozen mid-kneel, his gaze eternally fixed on the place she always sat, a moment caught outside time. Travelers who stumbled upon the grove said the statue was warm, that if you pressed your palm to his chest, you'd feel something faint, like a heartbeat remembered in a dream. And then, one final full moon, Leonthe came. She sat longer than usual, laid her head gently on his shoulder, and never moved again. Weeks later, villagers found her. Peaceful, eyes closed, a smile like a secret resting on her lips. Beside her, Apollo shimmered, just faintly, lit from within. No one touched him. They built no shrine, but the story spread. Now, when the moon is high and the wind is still, some say the swan glides once more across the lake, not to be seen, but to remember. Melanian wasn't born in a palace or bathed in divine incense. His first breath came beneath the canopy of a willow tree, as lightning tore the sky apart and thunder rolled like drums of fate. His mother, daughter of a midwife, wrapped him in linen as rain sang against the earth. Birds scattered, the world trembled, and still, the infant did not cry. He hummed. From the moment he could walk, music seemed to follow him. Streams whispered lullabies when he bent to drink, and leaves shivered in harmony as he passed. He didn't need teaching. Sound was part of him. By 10, he could echo the cry of any bird and spin it into melody. By 16, his hands on the lyre made soldiers stop mid-step and blink away tears they didn't know they had. He sang of rivers, of grief, of homes before the war. People called him blessed, a divine echo in human skin. He never claimed the title. Melanian wandered from hamlet to hamlet, giving his music freely, without pride or coin. His songs calmed fevered children, stitched old wounds in hardened men. Once, he played a lullaby to a dying child, who smiled and slipped into death as if it were a dream. But not every ear that heard him was mortal. One spring dusk, while playing beside a mirror-bright river, something shifted. The wind quieted. The frogs held their breath. And then they came. The muses. All 9. They stepped from the fold between realms like starlight woven into form. Each bore a different essence. Tragedy, dance, poetry, memory. Their eyes weren't warm or cold, just infinite. They listened. And then, impossibly, they sang. 9 voices in ancient harmony, older than any tongue. Melanian closed his eyes and joined them, not as a mirror, but as a new note in their chorus. When the final sound fell silent, even the constellations seemed nearer. The eldest muse, Calliope, touched his brow. "You are not ordinary," she said. "You are a vessel." And so began the tale of Melanian, the bard who made the heavens shiver. He followed them to the secret places of Mount Helicon, where few mortals had ever dared walk. There, under ageless trees and skies untouched by greed, the muses shaped him. Calliope taught him to weave epics into song. Clio whispered the bones of history into his dreams. Terpsichore danced as he played, his fingers learning the rhythm of wind and heartbeat. Euterpe handed him her flute and said only, "Listen." And he did. He didn't just absorb music, he absorbed truth. The truth between words, the silence that follows longing, the breath before snowfall. They gave him no magic, only perspective. In return, they asked just one thing: sing for us. But by us, they meant mortals. The tired, the grieving, the proud, the forgotten. Remind them, they said, that beauty could survive pain, that song could heal and cut in the same breath. And Melanian obeyed. He played in city squares and wheat fields, for kings and for beggars. His voice sparked revolts, mended wounds between fathers and daughters. He was the lullaby of the broken. But as his songs grew, so did something else: ambition. He began chasing harmonies not even the muses knew, sounds not found in heaven or earth, notes born of silence, forged in solitude. He began writing in secret, alone at night, creating a song not meant to be heard, but to become a final piece. He told no one, not even the muses, because now he didn't want to share the divine. He wanted to surpass it. And the muses noticed, not in his music, but in his gaze. The way he looked past them, as if the world owed him more than wonder. And fate noticed too. No mortal walks beside divinity forever without paying a price. So, Melanian vanished. He left behind applause and offerings. No more performances, no more teachings, no more prayers. Some said he was dead. Others claimed he'd gone mad. But he had gone deep, into the roots of Mount Helicon, where only echoes of old gods lingered. In a cave lit by singing crystals, he began to compose it. The final song. It came to him in fragments, through dreams, in silence, in thunder. He didn't write it, he uncovered it. A melody that moved with breath, twisted with heartbeat. Not a song, a truth. He heard stars being born in its first note, saw empires die in its final chord. It wasn't happy or sad, it simply was. He labored for months, maybe years. Time lost meaning inside the cave. He ate little, slept only when the music allowed it. Sometimes he wept, sometimes he laughed. The song passed through him more than from him. And when it was finished, the world changed. Birds forgot how to fly. Rivers leaned toward the mountain. The sky held its breath. And on Olympus, the gods turned to listen. Even the fates, who never looked away from their loom, paused. Clotho whispered, a thread trembles. Lachesis frowned. Atropos set down her shears. The muses waited. The gods waited. The world waited. But Melanian didn't return. He didn't sing. He didn't share it. He buried it. And in doing so, he set another music in motion. One of silence and consequence. When he finally emerged, the world felt smaller. Even the stars seemed dim beside the song that still hummed inside him. Crowds gathered, musicians, scholars, kings. What did you create? They begged. Please, let us hear. Melanian only smiled. Not yet. Only the muses saw the shift. They stepped from the dusk once more, cloaked in sorrow. You were chosen to carry beauty, said Erato. But beauty isn't meant to be hidden, added Cleo. You must sing, whispered Calliope. Melanian bowed his head. I will not see it cheapened. They flinched, as if his words had struck them. You think mortals unworthy? Terpsichore asked, her voice barely above a tremble. You believe only you can guard what was given. Melanian met their eyes, not with fury, but something colder. Possession. Yes, he said. A silence fell between them, vast and brittle like winter. Then you are no longer ours, Calliope whispered. Not because you created something greater than us, but because you buried it. He said nothing, and the muses vanished. Still the gods waited. Even Zeus, distant and unmoved by mortal concerns, paused his thunder to listen. Even Hades turned his head in the underworld depths. They waited for a single note, a sliver, a breath. But Melanian offered nothing. He kept the song sealed inside, unwritten, unspoken, unshared. He called it sacred. But sacred things, left sealed too long, begin to spoil. He played other pieces, songs that still drew tears and praise. But they knew, and so did he, something was missing. Worse, something had been taken. The song that bent fate and softened time now lay buried beneath pride. He told himself he was protecting it. But the muses, watching from the distance, saw the truth. He had chained the divine to his ego. And the gods who tolerated war, madness, devotion, did not tolerate theft. So one night the wind stilled, the stars dimmed, and the curse began. Not with fire, but with memory. It came like a whisper. That night, Melanian lay beneath an open sky. Sleep took him like an old friend. And there, in the dream, the final song returned. Clear, whole, beautiful beyond understanding. He soared through constellations, dove through oceans, was unmade and rebuilt by the notes. And then, nothing. Not faded, erased. When he awoke, he remembered only that it had once existed. Not a single note survived, not a rhythm, not a name. He grabbed his lyre, strummed desperately, wrong, all wrong. That night it came again, even more perfect than before. He wept with joy, sang along, lived within it. And with morning, gone. So began the cycle. Melanian lit candles through the night, scribbled in the dark, begged his mind to remember even a scrap. Nothing. Each morning, the melody slipped away like water through fractured hands. Each night it returned, radiant, complete. He stopped performing. Crowds vanished. Friends faded. His home fell to dust and chill. None of it mattered. Only the dream. Only the song.
The muses watched. He was given a gift, said Euterpe, and he caged it. Now he alone hears it, Polyhymnia murmured. And forgets it, whispered Clio. It wasn't vengeance. It was balance. He would hear it every night forever, but never remember. Hope turned sour in time, then rancid. Because what tortures a bard more than forgetting the greatest song he ever knew, and still knowing it exists? Melanian stopped counting the nights. They blurred, an endless circle of joy and loss, ecstasy in dreams, grief in waking. At first he tried to outwit it. He hired scribes to sleep beside him, consulted seers, sang to mirrors, hoping his reflection would betray the secret. Nothing. He began to fray. He stopped eating. His robe sagged from a hollow frame. His hands shook when he touched his lyre. Strings snapped. He didn't replace them. He no longer needed the instrument. Only the sleep, only the song. Daylight became punishment. He cursed the sun, smashed every window, lived in darkness. But still, each morning it vanished. He emerged like a ghost of himself, wild-eyed, frail. His voice, once silk, now hoarse from years of weeping in silence. He wandered like a beggar, not for coin, for memory. Have you heard it? He'd ask. The song with no start and no end. In your sleep. People pitied him, then feared him. They avoided his gaze. Some threw stones. He sang fragments in the streets, chaotic, broken, desperate. They made no sense to others, but to him they were clues, pieces, and always too few, always slipping away. When he failed, he laughed, then cried, then laughed again. And still each night, the song, and each dawn, emptiness. The Muses watched, not with anger, with mourning. He had once been their vessel. Now he was a shattered bowl, overflowing only when no one listened. The song he had buried now unraveled him, not with wrath, not with flame, with silence. Melanian no longer lived in the world. He wandered through it, yes, but his soul was elsewhere, suspended between a dream and its echo. He drifted barefoot through towns that once honored him. Children who once begged for songs now ran from his shadow. His name, once sung, now whispered. Don't end up like Melanian. He slept under trees, in ruins, in alleyways. Never begged for food, only for rest, only for the dream. And the curse never failed. Each night it returned. Each morning it vanished. The cruelty was not in forgetting. It was in remembering that he had once known. He spoke to stars, to walls, to strangers. Sometimes he'd sing to them, then demand they echo him, convinced the melody lived in another's throat. Once he followed a child who had hummed a simple tune, across 2 villages, barefoot and weeping, begging him to sing again. But it was nothing, a nursery rhyme. Melanian collapsed in the dust, sobbing for hours. And that night, again, the final song. He tried to move during the dream, tried to write, to sing, to capture. But the curse was airtight. He could only listen and forget. Some claimed he still hummed in sleep, that if you placed your ear to his lips at midnight, you'd hear a music like no other. But only then, only in darkness. The Muses stopped visiting, the gods turned away. Melanian, once a voice of the world, now wandered like a ghost of a song that no one remembered. And he could not forget. He had grown thin as a shadow at dusk, his skin pale and papered, his voice cracked and raw. He no longer sought food, nor shelter, nor even the song, only silence. One evening, he reached a cliff overlooking the sea. There were no cities, no paths, no voices, just wind and waves, and the slow bloom of stars in a darkening sky. He sat, curled against a stone, the breeze playing through what was left of his hair. He didn't cry, he didn't sing. He closed his eyes, and the dream came again. But this time, something had changed. There was no barrier, no fog to part, no chase through shadows. The final song was there, whole, bright, alive. Not merely music, a world, a place made of sound, a presence that breathed harmony. Melanian stood within it, barefoot upon chords that bent like grass, stars blooming above him in rhythm, the sky itself a choir, the wind in harmony with his breath. And for the first time, he wasn't listening, he was part of it. His voice joined the song. It didn't falter, it didn't vanish, it rose, pure, unbroken. He saw it all, every note once lost, every phrase he had mourned. But now, he understood. The song had never abandoned him. It had grown. It had evolved beyond the shape of his hands, beyond the need for paper or string. He was never its keeper, only its witness. And in that final dream, there was no guilt, no punishment, no pride, only peace. When the sun rose, Melanian did not. The wind curled softly around his body, as if lifting a final breath. A shepherd found him later,
lying beside the cliff, hands resting over his chest, like they cradled an invisible lyre. There was no scroll, no trace of written song, but above, high in the sky, seabirds wheeled in odd spirals, as if they danced to something only they could hear, and the sea, for a brief breath, did not crash. It sang, not with words, not with melody, but with something older, something he had finally become. They buried him beneath a lone olive tree, near the edge of the cliff where he last dreamed. No priest came, no bard recited his name, just the shepherd, a few villagers, those who remembered old songs, and stories whispered by firelight, of a bard who made gods pause, and stars lean closer. No monument marked his grave, only silence. But silence, real silence, amplifies truth. In years that followed, strange things stirred across the land. Travelers said that under a new moon, if you passed that cliff alone, you might hear a sound in the wind, one note, brief, breaking, beautiful. Children dreamed of songs they'd never heard. Minstrels woke weeping. Lyres clutched to their chest. No memory of why. And sometimes, a lone bard at dusk would pluck a single chord that didn't belong to them. Something perfect, something not theirs. By morning, they'd forget. The muses said nothing. They didn't curse another bard, didn't reclaim the song, because they knew what Milanian had become was not a warning, not a hero, but a legend, a soul who fell not from arrogance, but from refusal, and found redemption, not by sharing, but by surrendering. The final song was never written, never performed in theaters or temples. It doesn't live in pages. It lives in the quiet before the first chord, in the hush between dream and waking, in the way the sea sounds different when your heart is breaking. Milanian's song became the world's breath, a melody without words, a whisper in the bones, and those who hear it, even for a moment, never forget the silence that follows. They say, if you stand alone, on the right cliff, on the right night, with no one watching, and the wind is gentle, you may hear a sound that doesn't belong to this world, just a fragment, just a breath. And maybe, if you listen closely enough, you'll finally understand why Milanian could never let it go.